At her anniversary party, my husband mocked me in front of hundreds of guests. Marrying her was the biggest charity project of my life. The kind of woman who survives only by living off someone else's wallet. Mine. The entire room burst into laughter. Business partners and investors looked at me as if I were nothing but a joke. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I quietly set my glass down and walked to the restroom. A few minutes later, I returned to the party, walked straight to the front, and picked up the microphone. And within the next 10 minutes, his perfect life began collapsing. I really appreciate you stopping by. Let's build this community. Drop a comment and share where you're watching from. And if this story hits home, smash that like button and pass it on. One more thing. This narrative includes fictional elements crafted for entertainment and insight. Any resemblance to actual people or locations is purely by chance. But the lesson woven into this story, that's something I believe can serve you well. They say every woman has secrets. Mine is worth $5 billion. Tonight, I'm standing in front of the mirror in our Lincoln Park condo adjusting a navy dress I bought at Target $4.39. The price tag is long gone. But I remember it. I remember everything about this performance. The clearance rack where I found it, the way I made sure Derek saw the receipt. The little sigh I let out when I said, "I hope it's nice enough for your party." He barely looked up from his phone. "It's fine, Cassie. No one's looking at you anyway." That's the thing about being invisible. People tell you the truth because they forget you're listening. I smooth the fabric over my hips and examine the woman staring back at me. She looks tired. A little worn. Her hair is pulled into a simple ponytail. No expensive blowout. No salon highlights. Her shoes are last season's clearance from Nordstrom Rack. She clips coupons from the Sunday paper. She buys store-brand cereal. She drives a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. She is exactly what Derek Blackwell wanted. A wife who makes him look generous. A charity case he could rescue. She is also the biggest lie I've ever told. My real name is still Cassie Monroe. That part's true. But the struggling writer persona. The woman who apologizes for spending $20 on groceries. The meek little thing who nods politely while Derek's friends talk over her at dinner parties. That's fiction. And I'm very good at fiction. The truth is this. I am the founder and CEO of MC Ventures, a private equity firm managing $5.2 billion in assets across 47 portfolio companies. The MC stands for my initials. It's a ghost identity. A shell wrapped in offshore entities and Delaware LLCs. My attorney files my taxes separately from Derek's has since the day we got married. I told him I had a small inheritance from my aunt. Maybe 200,000. And I wanted to keep it separate for sentimental reasons. He laughed. He actually laughed. 200 grand. Babe. I make that in bonuses. Keep your little nest egg. I'm not worried. That was 4 years ago. August 12th, 2020. The day I became Mrs. Derek Blackwell. The day I signed a prenuptial agreement he thought would protect him. The day I walked into a cage of my own design and locked the door behind me. I didn't marry him for love. I married him for revenge. And tonight, our 4th anniversary, is the night I finally spring the trap. I check my phone. 6:45. The party starts at 7:00. The venue is the Chicago Athletic Association rooftop. One of those places where the city sprawls out beneath you like you own it. Derek picked it. Of course. He wanted to impress his colleagues from Sterling and Chase. The investment bank. Where he's a senior VP. He wanted to show off. He wanted everyone to see how successful he is. How far he's come. How much he's built. What he doesn't know is that I own 19% of Sterling and Chase. I bought the shares quietly over 3 years. funneled through 3 different shell companies, staying just under the 20% disclosure threshold. I've been a shadow at his board meetings, a silent partner in his quarterly bonuses, a ghost in his machine. He thinks tonight is a celebration. He has no idea it's an execution. I grab my purse, a Kate Spade knockoff I bought on eBay, and head for the door. Derek left an hour ago to make sure everything's perfect. Translation: he's already on his second whiskey and holding court with his investors, telling stories about deals he closed and risks he took. He'll be loud. He'll be charming. He'll be careless. That's when I'll strike. As I step into the elevator, I catch my reflection one more time in the polished steel doors. The tired housewife. The woman no one notices. The dead weight he's been dragging around for 4 years. Let him think that. Let him believe I'm small and broke and desperate. Let him stand up in front of 150 people tonight and toast to 4 hard years of marriage. Let him say I've been a burden. Let him humiliate me. Because 7 years ago, I made a promise. I stood in a cemetery on a cold April morning, stared at a grave that shouldn't exist, and swore to someone I loved that I would make the man responsible pay for what he did. 4 years ago, I started keeping that promise by marrying him. And tonight, I'm going to finish it. The elevator doors open onto the lobby. I step out into the Chicago dusk, the skyline glowing orange and gold, and I feel nothing but calm. No fear. No doubt. Just the quiet certainty of someone who's been planning this moment for years. Derek thinks he's the hunter. He thinks he married a woman who needed saving. He has no idea he's been living with a predator. I slip into my dented Civic, start the engine, and head toward the party. Toward the reckoning. Toward the moment when the perfect lie finally shatters and the truth comes for him like a freight train. But before tonight's confrontation, you need to understand how I got here. You need to see the foundation of this plan. You need to know about the woman whose cruelty taught me exactly what kind of family Derek came from and why I knew from the very beginning that he would never see me coming. You need to meet Patricia Blackwell, Derek's mother. The woman who looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe. The woman whose estate became the first lock on Derek's cage. The woman who in her declining years would inadvertently hand me the keys to her son's destruction. Because this story doesn't start with revenge. It starts with humiliation. And the Blackwell family has always been very good at that. October 2020. The first time I walked into Patricia Blackwell's house, I knew I was entering enemy territory. The house sat in Oak Park. One of those sprawling Victorians with manicured lawns and hedges trimmed into submission. Old money. Old rules. Old blood. Derek had warned me on the drive over. Mom can be particular. Just smile and agree with her. She'll warm up eventually. She did not warm up. I barely had my coat off before Patricia appeared in the foyer. Eyes sharp and cold. Scanning me like a jeweler appraising cubic zirconia. She was 67. Then tall and thin. In that way, rich women achieved through discipline and dissatisfaction. Her hair was silver, pulled into a severe bun. Her pearls were real. Her smile was not. So this is the one, she said. Not to me, but to Derek. Mom. This is Cassie. My wife. He said it with a little pride, like he'd brought home a trophy. Patricia extended 2 fingers for a handshake. I took them gently like I was afraid I'd break her. That's what I did back then. Made myself small. Soft. Harmless. The performance was everything. Well, Patricia said, releasing my hand as if it were contaminated. I suppose congratulations are in order. Dinner was worse. We sat in the dining room. Derek at one end of the long mahogany table. Patricia at the other. Me in the middle like a defendant at trial. The meal was catered roast chicken, asparagus, fingerling potatoes. I complimented everything. Patricia ignored me. It wasn't until dessert that she finally spoke directly to me. Cassie. Dear. What is it you do again? I'm a writer. I said softly. The lie I'd told Derek. Freelance. Articles. Essays. That sort of thing. How quaint. She dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin. And does it pay? Well. Not especially. But I enjoy it. I see. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Studying me. So. My son married a charity case. The air in the room went still. Derek said nothing. He didn't even look up from his plate. Derek has always had a soft heart. Patricia continued. Her voice honey over glass. He likes to rescue things. Stray cats. Struggling artists. Her eyes locked on mine. You're lucky he even looked at you. Dear. I forced a smile. I know. I'm very grateful. Good. You should be. She stood signaling the end of the meal. Now. Be a dear and help me clear the table. Derek and I need to discuss business. And just like that. I was dismissed. Sent to the kitchen like the help. I gathered the plates. Scraped the uneaten food into the trash. Loaded the dishwasher while they talked about investments and portfolios in the other room. Derek's laughter drifted through the walls. He was at ease here in his element in his mother's kingdom. I stood at the sink, hands in soapy water, and felt nothing. No anger. No hurt. Just the cold calculation of someone taking notes for later. Before I left that night, I noticed something. Patricia asked me the same question 3 times. What did you say your name was again? Each time. Derek corrected her gently. Each time. She looked confused, as if the information slid off her brain like water off glass. Early signs. Memory lapses. Repetition. I filed it away. 2 months earlier. Before the wedding. Derek had insisted on a prenuptial agreement. We sat in his attorney's office. Some slick partner at a downtown firm. And Derek explained with absolute confidence that the prenup would protect his assets from gold diggers. I signed without hesitation. But I added one condition. I want us to file taxes separately. I said. Derek frowned. Why? I have a small inheritance from my aunt. I explained, my voice apologetic. About $200,000. It's in a trust and the structure requires me to file separately to maintain the terms. It's a legal thing. I hope that's okay. Derek stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. 200,000. He shook his head. Grinning. Cassie. I spend that on client dinners. Keep your little nest egg. I don't want you thinking I married you for money. The attorney drafted the amendment. Derek signed without reading. The prenup included a liquidated damages clause. $5 million in penalties if either party committed fraud or infidelity. Plus a 100% division of marital assets in favor of the non-offending spouse. Standard language. The attorney said. Derek waved it off. Not like I'm planning to cheat or steal. He joked. I smiled and said nothing. He thought he was protecting himself. He thought the prenup was his shield. His insurance policy against a woman who might want his money. He had no idea I was building a cage and the taxes. That was the keystone. Filing separately meant Derek would never see my returns. Never see the $5 billion moving through offshore entities and Delaware LLCs. Never see MC Ventures. Never see the empire I'd built. While he was busy underestimating me, he looked at me and saw $200,000. Pocket change. A rounding error. I let him. As we drove home from Patricia's house that night, Derek reached over and patted my knee. You did great, babe. Mom's tough. But she'll come around. I nodded. Playing the role. The grateful wife. The charity case. But in my mind, I was already 3 moves ahead. Patricia's cruelty wasn't just cruelty. It was information. It told me exactly how this family operated, how they treated people they considered beneath them, how Derek had learned to laugh at humiliation instead of stopping it. It told me everything I needed to know. Over the next few weeks, I visited Patricia twice a week. I brought groceries. I helped with her garden. I sat in her living room and listened to her stories about her late husband, about the house she'd lived in for 40 years, about Derek as a boy. She never asked about my life. She never remembered my name. But she tolerated my presence because I was useful. Derek visited maybe twice a year. Usually when he needed something. I kept notes. I documented every conversation. I watched Patricia forget where she'd put her keys. Forget what day it was. Forget what we'd talked about 10 minutes earlier. The signs were unmistakable. Early stage Alzheimer's most likely. But Derek never noticed. He was too busy building his career, chasing his next deal, spending money he didn't have on a lifestyle he couldn't afford. Patricia wasn't the only one with a carefully crafted image. Derek had his own mask. And the whole city loved him for it. December 2021. I watched my husband become a saint. Navy Pier in December is all twinkling lights and freezing wind off Lake Michigan. The Chicago Children's Foundation had rented out the Grand Ballroom for their annual gala. One of those black tie events where the city's wealthy gather to feel good about themselves. Silent auction tables line the walls offering vacations to Aspen and dinners with Chicago Bulls players. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Champagne flowed like tap water, and at the center of it, all under a spotlight on the stage, stood Derek. He wore a custom tuxedo Tom Ford perfectly tailored. His hair was slicked back. His smile easy and confident. He looked every inch the successful investment banker. The generous philanthropist. The man who had everything and wanted to give back. The foundation's director introduced him with glowing praise. Tonight, we're honored to have Derek Blackwell, founder of the Blackwell Scholars Fund, a visionary committed to changing lives through education. The applause was immediate and thunderous. Derek stepped to the microphone and the room fell silent. Thank you. He began, his voice warm and humble. I'm not used to being in the spotlight like this. But tonight isn't about me. It's about the kids. He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. The audience leaned in. Every child deserves a chance. He continued. I grew up with opportunities. Good schools. Supportive parents. Access to resources. But I know that's not the reality for most kids in this city. Too many brilliant young people never get the chance to reach their potential because they can't afford college. He shook his head as if the injustice physically pained him. That's why I've committed $12 million over the next 5 years to send 247 kids to college. Full rides. Tuition room. Board books. Everything. Because education is the great equalizer. It's how we break cycles of poverty. It's how we build a better future. Standing ovation. People were on their feet clapping, some wiping tears. Donors lined up afterward. Checkbooks open. Eager to contribute. Local news cameras captured every moment. Derek shook hands. Posed for photos. Played the part of the humble hero. I stood backstage just out of frame, smiling for the cameras when they panned to me. The supportive wife. The woman who stood by her man. But inside I was doing math. $12 million raised. 247 kids promised scholarships. And I absolutely knew that not one of those kids would ever see a dime. I'd been watching Derek for over a year by then. Watching how he operated. How he talked a good game in public and did something entirely different in private. The Blackwell Scholars Fund was registered as a 501c3 nonprofit. which meant it had to file a Form 990 with the IRS every year, public record available to anyone who knew where to look. I knew where to look. I hired a forensic accountant, paid him under the table through one of my shell companies, and had him track every dollar that flowed through the fund. What he found was textbook fraud. 95% of donations went to administrative costs. That's what Derek called it on the forms. Administrative costs. Salaries. Office expenses. Consulting fees. All of it vague. All of it inflated. All of it funneled into offshore accounts Derek controlled. Only 5% went to actual program expenses. And even that was a stretch. A few token donations to other charities. Some promotional materials. Nothing that actually helped a single kid get to college. By the end of 2023, 2 years after that gala, the Blackwell Scholars Fund had raised over $12 million. Scholarships awarded 0. I started building a file. Names of the 247 families who'd been contacted by Derek's team. Donation receipts from well-meaning contributors. Fake expense reports Derek had filed with the IRS. It was all there. A paper trail of betrayal. But I needed more than numbers. I needed faces. Stories. Victims who could stand up in court and make a jury understand what Derek had stolen. That's when I found Sophie Martinez. She was 17. A senior at a Southside high school when Derek's people reached out in the spring of 2022. Top of her class. 4.0 GPA. Perfect SAT scores, accepted to MIT for biomed engineering. Her guidance counselor told her about the Blackwell Scholars Fund. Derek himself showed up at her school, gave a speech about opportunity and potential, and handed Sophie a certificate in front of the entire student body. $320. 000. 4 years. Full ride. Sophie's mom, Maria, cried. They celebrated. They believed their lives were about to change. Then Sophie showed up at MIT in August 2022 for orientation. The financial aid office had no record of the scholarship. No payment. No communication from the Blackwell Scholars Fund. Nothing. Maria called Derek's office 14 times. Left voicemails. Sent emails. No response. They had 48 hours to cover the tuition or Sophie would lose her spot. Maria sold their car. They borrowed $50,000 from relatives. Sophie took out $80,000 in student loans just to make it through her first year. When Maria finally emailed me, she'd found my contact through some charity board I was supposedly on as Derek's wife. Her message was short and devastating. We sold our car to cover the gap. My daughter is $80,000 in debt. Mr. Blackwell destroyed our family's future. I sat in my home office staring at that email and felt something shift inside me. Derek didn't just steal money. He stole hope. He stole dreams. He looked teenagers in the eye, promised them a future, and then walked away like it meant nothing. Sophie wasn't alone. I found 43 other families in the same situation by the end of 2023. Kids who'd been promised scholarships. Parents who'd made financial decisions based on Derek's lies. Futures derailed because a rich man wanted to look generous without actually being generous. Most of them didn't know how to fight back. They thought they were alone. They thought Derek was untouchable. I was going to show them they weren't. And he wasn't. I saved every email, every receipt, every fake expense report. I documented the $12 million raised and the $0 spent on scholarships. I built a case that would make the IRS Criminal Investigation Division salivate. The forensic accountant I'd hired traced every dollar. 95% went to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands in the Bahamas. Derek had set up shell companies with vague names. Blackwell Educational Services, LLC, Future Scholars Consulting Group, Youth Opportunity Management, Inc. All of them registered in Delaware. All of them controlled by Derek. All of them funneling donation money into accounts he could access whenever he wanted. The remaining 5% token gestures. $5,000 donation to a local YMCA. $10,000 to a community college scholarship fund. Just enough to make the books look legitimate if anyone glanced at them. But no one ever did. Donors trusted Derek. The foundation trusted Derek. The IRS trusted Derek. I didn't. By early 2024, I had a file 3 inches thick. Bank statements. Wire transfer records. Emails between Derek and his accountant discussing cost allocation strategies. Form 990s with inflated administrative expenses. Testimonials from families who'd been promised scholarships and received nothing. But I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone on the inside. Someone Derek trusted completely. Someone who could get close enough to document every crime, every lie, every moment of cruelty. And I'd found him 7 years earlier standing at a grave that shouldn't exist. April 2017. The day I buried my best friend. Was the day I learned the difference between revenge and justice. Oakwood Cemetery sprawls across the south side of Chicago, old oaks and weathered headstones stretching as far as you can see. It was drizzling that morning. The kind of cold spring rain that soaks through your coat and settles in your bones. The sky was gray. The trees were bare. Everything felt dead. Lily's casket was pale oak covered in white lies. The pastor said something about God's plan and eternal rest. I didn't hear most of it. I was too busy thinking about the man who should have been in that casket instead. Derek Blackwell. Lily Harper was my best friend. We met in 3rd grade. Grew up 3 blocks apart. Went to the same high school. Were roommates at Northwestern. She was brilliant. The kind of brilliant that made MIT accept her for a master's in computational finance. She spent 2 years developing a proprietary trading algorithm for her thesis. Investment firms were drooling over it before she even graduated. In 2015, Derek recruited her to Sterling and Chase. She was 24, ambitious. Ready to prove herself. 6 months later, he stole her algorithm. Presented it as his own, and collected a $1.2 million bonus. When Lily tried to fight back, he threatened to report her for insider trading, a crime she didn't commit, but couldn't afford to defend herself against. Then he convinced the partners at Sterling that she was unstable. They fired her in January 2016. She couldn't find another job. Every firm called Sterling for a reference. Every firm heard the same lie. On March 15, 2017, Lily Harper walked into Lake Michigan and didn't come back. She was 26 years old. At the funeral, after most people had left, I heard footsteps behind me. "You're Cassie." I turned. A man stood a few feet away, tall and lean, with dark hair and red-rimmed eyes. He looked like Lily. Same sharp cheekbones. Same serious expression. "I'm Ethan," he said. Lily's brother. He'd been living in Boston, working in private equity. He hadn't been around when everything fell apart. "I know what happened," Ethan said quietly. "Lily told me everything before he stopped. Derek Blackwell killed her as surely as if he'd pushed her off a bridge." "I know. Then help me make him pay." I should have hesitated. But I didn't. "How much are we talking about?" "Oh, lawsuit. He'll settle and move on." "I want more than that," Ethan said. "I want him ruined. I want him in prison. I want everyone to know what he is." I looked at Lily's grave. Fresh dirt. Wilting flowers. And made a decision that would define the next 7 years of my life. "Then we can't just sue him for what he did to Lily," I said. "We need to prove he's done this before. That he'll do it again. We need to build a federal case so airtight he can't escape. What kind of case? RICO racketeering. It's a federal statute designed to take down organized crime. But it works for corporate fraud. 2. The key is proving a pattern of criminal activity over time. One crime isn't enough. We need to show he's been doing this for years to multiple victims. Ethan's jaw tightened. How long will that take? Years. Maybe 7. Maybe more. I met his eyes. The FBI will need time to build the case. We'll need to document every crime, every victim, every dollar he steals. And we'll need to let him keep committing crimes so we have enough evidence to trigger RICO penalties. You want me to watch him hurt more people and do nothing? I want you to document it. I said. I want you to get close enough that he trusts you. Close enough that he tells you everything. And when the time comes, we'll use that trust to destroy him. Ethan stared at the grave for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. 7 years. But when the day comes, I want to be there. We shook on it. Standing over Lily's grave in the rain with the dirt still fresh. That's where the plan began. Over the next hour, we mapped it out. Ethan would infiltrate Derek's world, become his friend, his confidant. His eyes and ears inside Sterling and Chase. I would build the financial trap from the outside. And we'd work with the FBI to gather evidence under federal surveillance warrants. But there was one piece missing. I need to marry him, I said. Ethan looked at me like I'd lost my mind. You need to what? Marry him. It's the only way this works. I ticked off the reasons on my fingers. 1. I need a legal excuse to file taxes separately so I can hide my assets. 2. I need a prenup with a fraud penalty clause that only triggers if he commits crimes during the marriage. 3. I need access to his home, his files, his mother's estate. 4. I need the FBI to have justification for long-term surveillance. A wife cooperating with a federal investigation. That's gold. How long? 4 years. Maybe more. The charity fraud alone will take 2 years to develop. He has to launch the fund, collect donations, and fail to deliver scholarships. That's a timeline we can't rush. Add in the embezzlement, the Klaus operation, the forensic accounting. It all takes time. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "That's a hell of a sacrifice." "It's not a sacrifice if it works." I looked at Lily's headstone. She deserves more than a settlement check. She deserves to know Derek Blackwell spent the rest of his life in a federal prison. And if he figures it out, if he suspects you, then I'll be ready. Ethan nodded slowly. All right. 7 years. 4 of them married to a monster. But we do it right. We do it so thoroughly that when it's over, there's nothing left of him. Agreed. A year later, in May 2018, Ethan accidentally met Derek at a private equity networking event. They talked business, bonded over deals. By 2019, they were inseparable. When I married Derek in August 2020, Ethan was his best man. Derek never knew Lily had a brother. She'd only worked at Sterling for 6 months. Not long enough for him to learn about her family. And Ethan had been in Boston back then. By the time he moved to Chicago in 2018, Derek had already forgotten Lily existed. But we hadn't forgotten. And for 7 years, we built the cage around him. 1 bar at a time. 4 years into the operation, we needed a catalyst. Something to make Derek desperate enough to confess on record. That's when I invented Klaus Vandenberg. June 2023. I became a ghost investor from Switzerland. And Derek never saw it coming. I was sitting in my home office on a Wednesday morning, headset on, laptop open, staring at the VOP software on my screen. It was 10:47. Derek was at Sterling and Chase. Ethan had texted me 15 minutes earlier to confirm. The office was 5 miles away. But it might as well have been another planet. Derek had no idea that the woman he thought was home writing a blog post was about to become a Swiss billionaire named Klaus Vandenberg. I'd spent 18 months building Klaus. Not just a name, but an entire world. A life. A legend. It started with the website vandenbergcapital.ch. Clean. Professional. Minimalist design. The kind of site that screams old money. I hired a Zurich-based web developer, paid him through one of my shell companies, and had him hosted on Swiss servers. The site featured a portfolio of select investments, all of them fabricated but plausible. Tech startups in Singapore, renewable energy projects in Germany, a luxury hotel chain in Dubai. I created performance reports showing 22% annual returns from 2015 to 2023. Solid. But not flashy. Klaus wasn't a gambler. He was a strategist. Next. The media presence. I paid for native advertising. What Forbes and Bloomberg call sponsored content, and planted 3 articles over the course of a year. Short profiles. Nothing too detailed. Klaus Vandenberg. The private equity titan you've never heard of. How one Swiss investor made billions staying off the radar. The kind of articles that made Klaus sound exclusive, elusive, and very, very rich. Then I built the physical infrastructure. I rented a serviced office at Prader Platz 8 right in the heart of Zurich's financial district. UBS and Credit Suisse had headquarters within a 5-minute walk. The office came with a receptionist, a woman named Anna, who worked for the building's management company and had no idea she was part of an elaborate con. If Derek's assistant called to verify Vandenberg Capital's address, Anna would answer, Vandenberg Capital AG. How may I direct your call? Quantit profile with 500 connections. I bought aged accounts, people who'd been on LinkedIn for years, and had them endorse Klaus for venture capital, private equity, and strategic investments. I hired a graphic designer on Fiverr to create a professional hedge shot, a silver-haired man in his 60s wearing a navy suit looking dignified and slightly bored. The photo was a composite generated by AI. Klaus didn't exist. But his face did. The final piece was the voice. I hired a Swiss voice actor, a man in his 50s with a thick Zurich accent, and had him record 2 hours of sample phrases. Then I used AI voice synthesis software to create a deep fake voice model. The technology had come a long way by 2023. With a 2-cond latency, I could type responses in real time, and the software would speak them in Klaus' voice. To Derek, it would sound like a live phone call. To me, it was a script. The whole operation cost me about $200,000. For most people, that's a fortune. For someone managing $5 billion, it was the best investment I ever made. On June 15th, I made the first call. I routed it through a VoIP server in New York. One-party consent state, which meant I could legally record the conversation without Derek's knowledge. I pressed call and waited. 3 rings. Then Derek's voice. Smooth and confident. Derek Blackwell. I typed into the text box. The AI spoke. Mr. Blackwell. This is Klaus Vandenberg calling from Zurich. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. There was a pause. I could almost hear Derek's brain working. Zurich Vandenberg money. Not at all. Derek said. What can I do for you? I've been following your work at Sterling and Chase with great interest. I'm looking to deploy $50 million into a high-growth partner in the US market. Your colleague Ethan Harper recommended you. Are you interested? Another pause. Longer this time. $50 million. Derek said carefully. That's significant. Can I ask how you heard about me? Ethan and I go back several years. We were on a panel together in Singapore. When I mentioned I was looking for a US-based partner, He suggested I speak with you. All lies. But Derek didn't know that. I appreciate the referral. Derek said. But I have to be honest. I don't typically take calls without a video conference or in-person meeting first. How do I know you're who you say you are? I've been waiting for this. Mr. Blackwell. I understand your caution. But you should know I value discretion above all else. My clients include sovereign wealth funds and family offices who demand absolute privacy. I don't do video conferences. I don't meet new partners until after the first 50 million is deployed. If that's not acceptable, I have a wait list of qualified investors. I'm offering you first position because Ethan spoke highly of you. But if you'd prefer to pass, I understand. The scarcity play. The exclusivity angle. The subtle threat that he might miss out. Let me talk to Ethan. Derek said. I'll get back to you. Of course. But Derek. This line is encrypted. Nobody else is listening. In our world, discretion is everything. I hung up. 20 minutes later, Ethan texted me. He's calling. Ready for phase 2. Derek met Ethan for lunch that day at a steakhouse in the Loop. Ethan played his part perfectly. He showed Derek a fabricated wire transfer receipt. A photoshopped document showing a $5 million transfer from Harper Family Trust to Vandenberg Capital AG. He told Derek he'd flown to Zurich the previous month. Toured Klaus's office. Met his team. He's legit. Ethan said. Manages $2 billion. Keeps it quiet. That's why you haven't heard of him. Guy doesn't do press. Doesn't do video. Doesn't do anything that leaves a trail. But his track record speaks for itself. Derek bought it. Hook, line and sinker. 5 days later. Klaus called again. Derek. I need to move quickly. I'm prepared to wire 50 million to your fund by August. But I need assurances. Can you show me your personal portfolio performance? Derek hesitated. Then. Because greed is a hell of a drug. He said. Klaus. I'll be honest with you. My official returns are solid. But I've been creative with some off-book opportunities. Client funds. High-yield private deals. The firm doesn't need to know. I typed nothing. Let the silence hang. I appreciate your candor. Klaus finally said. Discretion is key in our business. Derek had just confessed to embezzling client funds on a recorded line. 3 minutes of audio. Clear as day. I saved the file. Backed it up to 3 different encrypted servers. Sent a copy to the FBI contact I'd been working with for 2 years. But I didn't stop there. I needed more. I needed Derek to believe Klaus was real until the very end. I needed him desperate, reckless, and willing to do anything to close the deal. Over the next 6 months, Klaus became Derek's obsession. And with every call, Derek dug himself deeper. By December, Derek was drowning. I sat in my home office, headphones on, listening to the recording of Klaus's 15th call. It was late at night. Derek had called from his car, voice tight with desperation. Klaus. I need this deal to close. I've moved some funds around to show you I'm serious. 8 million high-yield opportunities just like you asked for. But I need the 50 million wired by January or I'm exposed. Moved some funds around. That was Derek speak for embezzled from 3 client accounts. I'd been running Klaus for 6 months by then. And every call had pulled Derek deeper into the trap. It was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Always dangling the carrot. Always finding a reason to delay. Always making Derek prove himself just a little bit more. The campaign had started in August. A month after the first call. Klaus had promised to wire $50 million within 30 days. Then came the excuses. Swiss banking regulations required additional compliance reviews. The Zurich office needed board approval for US investments. Klaus's legal team was drafting the partnership agreement. Always a reason. Always just out of reach. Derek bought every excuse because he needed to. His gambling debts were piling up. I'd been tracking them through a private investigator for 2 years. By mid-2023, he owed over $2 million to offshore sportsbooks and Las Vegas casinos. He was desperate for a big score, and Klaus was dangling a $0.00 million lifeline. In October, Klaus escalated. Derek, I need to see your preliminary financials. Client portfolio breakdowns. Performance metrics. Asset allocations. I want to understand exactly where my capital will be deployed. Derek sent them real client data. Names. Account numbers. Investment holdings. All of it confidential. All of it protected under federal law. The Graham-Leach BLLY Act makes it a federal crime for financial institutions to share customer information without consent. Derek had just handed me a smoking gun. I forwarded the files to the FBI within an hour. By December, Klaus had increased the stakes again. Derek, as I'm now considering $100 million. But I need you to prove your nerve. Show me you're willing to take risks. Show me you're not afraid to move aggressively when opportunity knocks. That's when Derek embezzled $8 million. He didn't steal it outright. He was smarter than that. Or at least he thought he was. He created a fake private placement deal. Told 3 of his wealthiest clients it was an exclusive opportunity with guaranteed 20% returns. And convinced them to wire $8 million into an investment vehicle he controlled. A shell company registered in Delaware with Derek as the sole signatory. Ethan photographed the spreadsheet. Derek had been keeping meticulous records. Dates. Amounts. Client names. Account transfers. He thought he was being careful. He thought he'd cover his tracks once Klaus' money came through. He didn't realize Klaus would never send a dime. He didn't realize every wire transfer. Every forged statement. Every lie he told his clients was being documented by the FBI. Because I'd been working with the FBI for almost 3 years. It started in January 2021. 5 months after I married Derek. I'd walked into the Chicago field office on a cold Monday morning. Asked to speak with someone in the Financial Crimes Division and been introduced to Special Agent Sarah Reynolds. Reynolds was mid-40s sharped nonsense. She'd spent 15 years taking down white-collar criminals. Ponzi schemes. Insider trading, corporate fraud. When I laid out Derek's charity fraud plan. His gambling debts. And Patricia's trust. She listened without interrupting. How long have you been planning this? She asked when I finished. 4 years, since the day my best friend killed herself because of him. Reynolds studied me for a long moment. You want a RICO case? I want him in federal prison for 20 years. I want asset forfeit. I want him to lose everything. Then we need time. We need evidence of a pattern of criminal activity over multiple years. One crime isn't enough for RICO. We need to prove he's been doing this repeatedly. Systematically. I can give you 7 years. I said. She raised an eyebrow. That's a hell of a commitment. He destroyed my best friend. He's going to destroy 247 families with his fake charity. And if I don't stop him, he'll destroy more. So, yes. 7 years. Reynolds opened a case file that day. By March, she'd secured a Title III wiretap warrant from the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois. Under federal law, Title III allows law enforcement to intercept wire and oral communications if there's probable cause a crime is being committed. Ethan started wearing a wire in April 2021. Every conversation with Derek. Every lunch. Every golf outing. Every late-night drink was recorded under federal authority. Derek's office phone at Sterling & Chase was monitored under the company's workplace surveillance policy, which he'd signed without reading in 2014. And every Klaus call I made was captured under the Title III warrant because Derek was the target of an ongoing federal investigation. Federal law supersedes state law. Illinois requires two-party consent for recordings. But a federal wiretap warrant overrides that. Every word Derek said was admissible in court. By January 2024, I had 18 months of Klaus recordings, 3 years of Ethan's wire recordings, and documented evidence of charity fraud, embezzlement, unauthorized disclosure of client data, and securities fraud. I met Agent Reynolds at a cafe in the Loop on a grey January afternoon. I slid a USB drive across the table. 18 months of recordings. I said. Embezzlement. Charity fraud. Client data theft. Everything you need for a RICO indictment. Reynolds picked up the drive. RICO requires a pattern of racketeering activity. You've documented 7 years. That's more than enough. When do you arrest him? When do you want us to? I didn't hesitate. August 12 th. 2024. My 4th wedding anniversary. He's throwing a party. 150 people. Rooftop venue. All his investors and board members. I want him to feel safe first. I want him surrounded by everyone he's tried to impress. And then I want it all to come crashing down. Reynolds was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. If we arrest him at the party in front of his board, his investors, his colleagues, he'll have nowhere to hide. No lawyer can spin that. And the Sterling partners will cooperate to save their own skins. The optics work in our favor. So you'll wait. We'll wait. Not because you're in charge, but because the plan makes tactical sense. She leaned forward. But understand this. Once we move, it's over. He'll be arraigned within 24 hours. Federal charges. No bail. Are you ready for that? I've been ready for 7 years. The FBI agreed to wait. They'd arrest Derek the day after the party, giving me 24 hours to execute the final phase. But before that could happen, I needed to secure Patricia's estate because Derek was about to lose everything. And when a desperate man loses his money, his reputation, and his freedom, he goes after whatever's left. In Derek's case, that meant his mother's $4.2 million estate. Patricia was the key. If Derek lost his fortune, he'd liquidate her assets to stay afloat. He'd sell her house, drain her accounts, cash out her late husband's pension. And Patricia, whose memory was slipping, whose trust in her son was absolute, would never see it coming. I couldn't let that happen. So, in August 2020, just weeks after I married Derek, I made a move he never saw coming. August 2020. 6 days after I became Derek's wife, I started dismantling his future. I sat in the waiting room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, watching Patricia Blackwell forget she'd asked me the same question 3 times in 10 minutes. Why are we here again? Your doctor's appointment. Patricia, the neurologist. Oh, right. She nodded, smoothed her skirt, looked out the window. 2 minutes passed. Why are we here? I'd been expecting this. I'd been visiting Patricia twice a week since Derek and I started dating in the fall of 2019. Groceries. Garden work. Listening to her stories about her late husband. About Derek as a boy. About the house in Oak Park she'd lived in for 40 years. Derek visited maybe twice a year. Usually when he needed something. By the summer of 2020, Patricia was forgetting names, repeating questions, losing track of time. I suggested she see a specialist. She agreed not because Derek asked, but because I did. Dr. Harold Winters was in his early 60s. Silver-haired and methodical, he led Patricia into his office while I waited outside. 40 minutes later, he called me in. Patricia sat in the chair across from his desk, hands folded, looking small and confused. Mrs. Blackwell. Dr. Winters said gently. I've completed a cognitive assessment. Your score on the mini mental state examination was 27 out of 30. That indicates mild cognitive impairment, combined with the symptoms you've described. Memory loss, difficulty with daily tasks, confusion about time and place. I'm diagnosing you with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. Patricia's face went blank. She didn't cry. She just stared at him. What does that mean? She asked quietly. It means your condition will progress. There's no cure. But there are medications that can slow the decline. More importantly, now is the time to make legal arrangements. Powers of attorney, healthcare directives, estate planning. You still have legal capacity to make those decisions. But that window won't stay open forever. Patricia looked at me. Cassie, I don't understand. What do I need to do? We'll figure it out together, I said. After the appointment, I drove Patricia back to Oak Park. She was quiet most of the way, staring out the window. When we pulled into her driveway, she didn't get out right away. Cassie, she said, voice small. I need to tell you something. What is it? Derek's been asking me to co-sign loans. He says it's for business. But I've seen the credit card bills, the casino receipts. His gambling. Isn't he? I didn't lie. Yes. His father left me everything when he died. The house. The pension. The savings. I don't want Derek to lose it all. She turned to me, eyes wet. I don't trust my own son with money. Does that make me a terrible mother? No. I said. It makes you smart. Will you help me? I don't know what to do. I know an attorney who specializes in estate protection. We can set up a trust to make sure your assets are safe no matter what happens. Would you like me to arrange a meeting? Patricia nodded relieved. I'd trust you with my life before I'd trust Derek with $1. I've been building this relationship for over a year. Groceries. Garden work. Listening. Derek thought I was being a beautiful daughter-in-law. He had no idea I was laying the groundwork to cut off his last escape route. 4 days later on August 22 ND, Patricia and I sat in the offices of Campbell & Associates, a small estate planning firm in downtown Chicago. Margaret Campbell was 58, sharp-eyed professional. She'd been practicing estate law for 30 years. And she represented Patricia. Not me. Dr. Winters was there, too. At my request, Margaret had asked him to provide a medical certification confirming Patricia's capacity during what he called a lucid interval, a period of clarity common in early-stage Alzheimer's patients. Margaret walked Patricia through the document slowly, patiently. Mrs. Blackwell, I'm going to explain what we're signing today. This is an irrevocable trust. That means once you sign it, you cannot change or cancel it. The trust will hold your house, your investments, and your late husband's pension, approximately $4.20 million. Cassie Monroe will serve as trustee, which means she'll manage these assets for your benefit. Do you understand? Yes, Patricia said clearly. Why do you want to set up this trust? Because my son has a gambling problem. I'm afraid if I leave everything to him, he'll lose it. I want to make sure I'm taken care of. And I want someone I trust to manage my money. And you trust Cassie more than I trust Derek. Patricia's voice was steady. She's been kinder to me in 1 year than he's been in 10. Margaret made notes. Then she handed Patricia a pen. Before you sign, I need to ask. Is anyone pressuring you to do this? Do you feel coerced or threatened in any way? No, Patricia said. This is my decision. Dr. Winters leaned forward. Mrs. Blackwell, I've evaluated you today. And in my professional opinion, you have full legal capacity to execute these documents. You understand what you're signing and the consequences of your decision. Is that correct? Yes. We signed 3 documents that afternoon. An irrevocable trust. A durable power of attorney for healthcare. Naming me as Patricia's agent. A durable power of attorney for finances. Also naming me. Margaret included a purpose statement in the trust document. This trust is established to protect the grantor's assets from potential creditor claims and to ensure proper management during any period of incapacity. Patricia also wrote a letter in her own hand which Margaret notarized and filed with the trust. I am making this decision of my own free will. Derek is my son. But I do not trust him with money. Cassie has shown me more kindness in the past year than Derek has in many. I want her to protect my legacy. Margaret's assistant recorded the entire signing ceremony on video. Standard practice for high V-value estates. If Derek ever challenged the trust, we'd have ironclad proof Patricia knew exactly what she was doing. When it was over, Patricia hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered. I hugged her back. But I didn't do this out of kindness. I did it because I knew what was coming. When Derek lost everything, his job, his money, his freedom, he'd try to drain Patricia's accounts to stay afloat. He'd sell her house, cash out her pension, leave her with nothing. But the trust was irrevocable. He couldn't touch a penny, and I controlled every dollar. Patricia deserved to be safe. But more than that, I needed Derek to have nowhere left to run. Over the next few months, I continued my twice-weekly visits. I paid Patricia's bills from the trust account. I hired a cleaning service. I arranged for a part-time caregiver when Patricia started forgetting to take her medications. Derek never asked about any of it. He assumed his mother was managing her own affairs just as she always had. By 2024, Patricia's condition had deteriorated significantly. She'd moved to Sunrise Senior Living, a memory care facility in Oak Park. $12,000 a month paid from the trust. She didn't recognize me anymore. She didn't recognize Derek on the rare occasions he visited. But she was safe. She was cared for. And Derek couldn't touch a single dollar of the $4.2 million that kept her there. Derek still didn't know about the trust. And when the bills started piling up, he was about to get his first shock. March 2024. Derek finally discovered he had nothing left to steal. I was sitting in my home office when my phone rang. Derek. I let it ring twice before answering. I'd been waiting for this call for weeks. Cassie. His voice was tight, barely controlled. "We need to talk about what?" "About my mother. I just tried to wire money into her account to cover some medical bills and the bank told me the account is locked. They said something about a trust. Do you know anything about this?" I leaned back in my chair. "A trust? No. I don't think so. Maybe your mom set something up years ago. Don't play dumb with me. The bank said the trustee is Cassie Monroe. That's you." "Oh," I said, letting the surprise sound genuine. "I didn't realize you didn't know." "Didn't know what?" "Your mother asked me to help her set up an estate plan back in 2020. She was worried about her finances. She wanted to make sure everything was protected." Silence. "Then protected from what?" "From creditors. From bad decisions." "Derek, your mom knew about your gambling. She knew about the debts. She didn't want to lose everything your father left her. You manipulated her," he said, voice rising. "You got her to sign away her estate when she had dementia. She had early-stage Alzheimer's when she signed the trust. She was evaluated by Dr. Winters. She had full legal capacity and she was represented by an independent attorney who made sure she understood exactly what she was doing." "Who?" "Margaret Campbell. You can call her yourself. I'm sure she'll be happy to explain how ironclad that trust is." He hung up. I knew what came next. Derek would call Margaret, demand answers, threaten to sue, and Margaret would shut him down with the kind of calm professionalism that comes from 30 years of practice. I was right. 2 hours later, Derek called again. This time, he was shouting, "You conniving, you got my mother to sign over $4 million. You're a gold digger. Just like I always knew. Your mother asked me to help her," I said, keeping my voice steady. "She trusted me to protect her assets. If you have a problem with that, take it up with a judge." "I will. I'll take you to court. I'll prove you manipulated her." "Good luck with that. Margaret has video of the signing. Dr. Winters certified your mother's capacity. And I have 4 years of receipts showing I've been paying every one of your mother's bills while you've been where exactly. You visited her twice in 4 years. Derek. Twice. I've been paying $12,000 a month for her memory care at Sunrise. Where have you been? That's not where were you when she forgot my name? When she stopped recognizing her own house? When she needed 24-hour care because she couldn't remember how to use a phone? I've been working. Providing for you've been gambling and losing and stealing from your clients to cover your debts. Don't pretend this is about your mother. This is about you realizing you can't use her money to save yourself." He hung up again. 3 days later, he showed up at the house. It was late afternoon and I was in the kitchen when I heard the front door slam. Derek stormed in. Face red. Hands shaking. "You think you're so smart," he said. "You think you've won. I think your mother is safe. That's all I ever wanted. You wanted control. You wanted to make sure I had nothing. You had everything. Derek. A career. A reputation. Your mother's love. You destroyed all of it yourself." He picked up a glass from the counter and hurled it at the wall. It shattered, shards scattering across the floor. I didn't flinch. I'd been preparing for this moment for 7 years. I knew Derek. He could hurt people with words. With money. With lies. But he'd never had the guts to actually hit someone. "You're pathetic," I said quietly. "What did you say?" "I said you're pathetic. You blame everyone else for your problems. Your mother. Me. Your clients. Your colleagues. But the truth is, you're just a coward. You steal because you're too weak to earn anything honestly. You lie because you're too stupid to keep your story straight. And you're standing in my kitchen throwing tantrums because you finally realized you have nowhere left to run." He stared at me, breathing hard. "Get out," I said. "This is my house." "Actually, it's not. Check the deed. I bought it 2 years ago through one of my companies. You've been living in my house, Derek. Just like you've been living off my patience. But that ends tonight. I'll fight this. I'll fight the trust. I'll fight you. Go ahead. But you should know I've been documenting everything. Every bill I've paid for Patricia. Every decision I've made in her best interest. Every time you ignored her. I have 4 years of evidence proving I'm a better trustee than you ever were a son. So yes. Hire a lawyer. Take me to court. Let a judge see exactly who you are." He left without another word. I stood in the kitchen staring at the broken glass on the floor and felt nothing but satisfaction. Derek thought Patricia's money was his backup plan. He thought when Klaus fell through. When his embezzlement caught up with him. When his charity fraud was exposed. He could liquidate his mother's estate and disappear. But I'd locked it down 4 years ago. Every dollar. Every asset. Every escape route. And now with Klaus demanding results and the FBI closing in, Derek was about to make his most desperate move yet. 4 months later, on our 4th anniversary, he decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. He wanted to prove he didn't need me. What he didn't realize was I'd been counting on that. August 12th, 2024. The night I had waited 4 years to arrive. Cindy's rooftop glittered like a jewelry box. String lights woven through steel beams cast a warm amber glow over white linen tables, and the Chicago skyline stretched out behind us. A backdrop of glass and ambition. 150 guests mingled beneath the open sky, champagne flutes catching the last light of sunset. Millennium Park sprawled below the bean, reflecting the city back at itself. Derek had chosen this venue. The Chicago Athletic Association rooftop was one of the most exclusive event spaces in the city. And he wanted everyone to know he could afford it. He'd spent $6,000 on a custom Tom Ford tuxedo. I'd spent $39.99 on a navy dress from Target. No one noticed the difference. I stood near the railing watching him work the crowd. CFOs from competing firms. Senior partners from Sterling and Chase. Investors. Charity donors who still believed in the Blackwell Scholarship Fund. He moved between them with practiced ease. Shaking hands. Laughing too loud. Refilling his glass too often. By 7:30, he'd finished 4 Wises. I counted. He always drank when he was stressed. And tonight, Derek Blackwell was drowning. Ethan stood across the terrace, nursing a club soda and nodding along to a conversation about market trends. His eyes flicked to mine. Once brief. Deliberate. And I gave the smallest nod. James Caldwell, CEO of Sterling and Chase, stood near the bar, surrounded by 12 board members. I'd sent each of them a private message 2 weeks ago. Brief meeting after the party. Financial matter regarding Derek Blackwell. Attendance requested. They thought it was routine. They had no idea they were about to witness an execution. At 7:45, Derek stepped up to the small stage near the center of the rooftop. Someone handed him a microphone. The crowd quieted faces. Turning toward him with polite curiosity, he swayed slightly, gripping the mic stand for balance. Thank you all for coming tonight. He began, his voice too loud. The edges slurred. 4 years ago, I made a decision. Some of you thought it was impulsive. Scattered laughter. But I knew what I was doing. I married a woman who needed me. My stomach tightened. But I kept my face neutral. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Not because I wanted to hear him humiliate me in front of 150 people, but because I needed him to. Cassie is a good person. Derek continued, gesturing vaguely in my direction. Kind. Patient. But let's be honest. She's never been ambitious. She writes books no one reads. She clips coupons. She shops at Target. He paused, letting the judgment sink in. I've given her everything. A home. A life. A name that means something in this city. And you know what? She's never once said thank you. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Others smiled, uncertain whether this was a joke or something darker. Derek raised his glass. Cassie, you've been dragging me down since day one. I thought I was rescuing you. But honestly, you're dead weight. Silence fell across the rooftop. Someone coughed. A waiter froze mid-step. I felt 150 pairs of eyes swing toward me, waiting for tears, for anger, for collapse. I felt none of those things. All I felt was satisfaction, because this was the moment Derek Blackwell gave me permission to destroy him. I set my champagne flute on the nearest table. The clink of glass against marble echoed louder than it should have. Derek, I said, my voice calm, clear, and loud enough to carry across the terrace. I think we need to talk. But not here. He blinked, surprised. What? Downstairs in the boardroom. I turned to James Caldwell and the 12 board members standing near the bar. Gentlemen, I believe you received my message. If you'll join us, please. James frowned but nodded. The board members exchange glances. Confused. Curious. But obedient. When the CEO moves, they follow. Derek laughed a harsh, bitter sound. What is this? Cassie, you want to beg me to stay? Fine. Let's get this over with. I didn't answer. I walked toward the elevator, my heels clicking against the polished floor. Behind me, I heard the scrape of chairs, the murmur of voices. Derek followed, stumbling slightly. So did Ethan. So did James. So did all 12 board members. They thought I was about to apologize. They had no idea. The elevator ride down was silent. Derek stood beside me, arms crossed, jaw tight. He didn't ask what I wanted. He didn't need to. He was angry, humiliated, and drunk enough to think he could still intimidate me. He was wrong. The boardroom was on the 3rd floor. A long windowless space with a mahogany table, leather chairs, and a projection screen at the far end. I'd reserved it 3 weeks ago. The hotel staff had set it up exactly as I'd requested. Folders at each seat. A laptop connected to the projector. A picture of water on the table. I stepped inside and held the door open. One by one, they filed in. Derek, Ethan, James. 12 board members in tailored suits. Their expressions ranging from confusion to concern. Derek slumped into the chair at the head of the table. What the hell is this? Cassie. I closed the door. Then I locked it. The click echoed through the room. This, I said quietly, is the end. Derek laughed. The end of what? Of you. I walked to the front of the room and opened the laptop. The projection screen flickered to life, and Derek's face appeared frozen mid-sentence in a video call. Lips moving. Voice muted. Below the image, a timestamp. June 15th, 2023. Below that, a caption. And Klaus Vandenberg. First contact. Derek's expression shifted. Confusion. Recognition. Panic. James Caldwell leaned forward. What is this? I pressed play. The boardroom was ready. The evidence was lined up. And for the first time in 4 years, I was about to stop pretending. All right. Before I walk into that room and tear down every lie Derek ever told, I need to know you're still with me. Drop the word justice in the comments below. Quick heads up, parts of this story are fictionalized to illustrate a deeper truth. If you're not into that, feel free to click away now. But if you want to see karma, hit hard, stick around. The boardroom felt smaller than it was. 15 people sat around a mahogany table that could have seated 20. But the silence made the walls press inward. Leather chairs. Dim recessed lighting. A projection screen at the far end. Blank and waiting. Derek slumped at the head of the table. Arms crossed. Jaw tight. Ethan sat 2 chairs down, his face unreadable. James Caldwell occupied the seat to my right, leaning forward with his hands folded. The 11 board members of Sterling and Chase filled the remaining chairs. CFOs. Senior partners, men in tailored suits who'd spent the last hour drinking champagne and congratulating my husband. Now they looked confused. Concerned. But not yet alarmed. I stood at the front of the room. Laptop. Open, remote control in hand. Derek broke the silence first. Cassie. What the hell is this? If you want to embarrass me. I cut him off. Sit down. Derek. He blinked. Startled by the sharpness in my voice. Then he sat. I took a breath and turned to face the room. Gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight. I know this is unusual. But I have information that directly impacts Sterling and Chase's fiduciary responsibility to its clients. What I'm about to show you is evidence of systematic fraud, embezzlement. An illegal activity conducted by Derek Blackwell over the past 7 years. Derek laughed, a brittle hollow sound. Cassie. What are you talking about? You don't know anything about my business. I clicked the remote. The projection screen flickered to life. MC Ventures LLC Portfolio Overview. Assets under management $5.20 billion. Portfolio companies 47 sectors, fintech, biotech, SAS, clean energy. Average annual return 28%. Founder and CEO Cassie Monroe. The room went silent. Derek stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. That's impossible. You're a writer. You don't have money. I've been a billionaire longer than I've known you. Derek, my voice was calm, steady. MC Ventures. My initials. I built it from nothing over 15 years. I started with a single angel investment when I was 23. A fintech startup that went public and netted me $42 million. I rolled that into venture capital. Built a portfolio. And never stopped. And for the past 4 years. I've been watching you. Documenting you. Waiting for this moment. James Caldwell leaned forward. His expression shifting from confusion to sharp focus. Mrs. Blackwell, are you saying you have evidence of wrongdoing? I have 3 years of FBI recordings. 7 years of financial records and testimony from 247 victims of Derek's charity fraud. I've been working with the FBI since January 2021. They have everything. The recorded calls. The offshore transfers. The falsified expense reports. It's over. Derek. Derek stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. Ethan. Tell them. Tell them she's lying. Ethan rose slowly, his gaze locked on Derek. His voice was quiet. Cold. I can't do that. Derek. Because everything she said is true. And I've been helping her document it for the past 7 years. Derek staggered backward. What? Ethan. You're my best friend. No. Ethan's voice cut through the room like a blade. I was never your friend. I'm Lily Harper's brother. Remember her? The analyst you stole the algorithm from back in 2015. The woman you destroyed. She was my sister, Derek. And she killed herself because of you. The color drained from Derek's face. I met you at that private capital event in May 2018. Ethan continued. You didn't recognize my last name because Lily and I had different fathers. You thought I was just another investor looking for connections. You invited me to dinners. Golf. Your wedding. You trusted me. And I spent 7 years recording every word you said. Every crime you committed. Every lie you told. Derek's hands trembled. You set me up. No. Ethan said quietly. You set yourself up. I just made sure there was a record. I clicked the remote again. A video appeared on the screen. Derek's face frozen mid-sentence. His lips moving, his expression eager. Below the image. June 15th. 2023. Klaus Vandenberg. First contact. I pressed play. Klaus's voice filled the room. Smooth. German accented. Artificially generated. Mr. Blackwell. I've been following your work for some time. I'm interested in discussing a private placement opportunity. $50 million. Are you available to talk? Derek's voice followed, unguarded and hungry. $50 million? Absolutely. What do you need from me? I paused the video and turned to James Caldwell. Klaus Vandenberg doesn't exist. I created him. I built a website. Planted articles in the Financial Times. And Bloomberg rented a serviced office in Zurich. And used AI voice synthesis to make Derek believe he was talking to a real investor. It took 18 months and $200,000. And Derek never once verified his identity. James' expression hardened. What did he tell this Klaus? I clicked forward through the recordings. Derek's voice played in fragments. Stitched together like a confession. I moved $8 million from 3 client accounts into a private placement vehicle. The charity fund. It's a shell. We've raised $12.4 million. But 0 scholarships have been awarded. I can get you client data. Proprietary trading algorithms. Whatever you need. The room was silent. One of the board members, a grey-haired man in his 60s, set down his pen. Jesus Christ. James Caldwell turned to Derek, his face carved from stone. Is this true? Derek's mouth opened. Closed. He looked at me. Then at Ethan. Then at the screen. I can explain. No. James said quietly. You can't. I clicked to the next slide. Blackwell Scholarship Fund. Financial summary. Total funds raised $12.40 million. Scholarships awarded $0. Administrative costs. Offshore accounts 11.8. 8 million families defrauded 247s. Beside the numbers, I'd included a photograph. A 17-year-old girl in a graduation cap holding an acceptance letter. Below it, a caption. Sophie Martinez. MIT class of 2027. Promised $320. 000. Received 0. Sophie's mother sold the family car and borrowed $80. 000 in loans because Derek promised a full scholarship. I said quietly. She's one of 247 families who trusted him, who believed in him, who are now buried in debt because he stole their hope. Derek sank into his chair, his face ashen. I looked around the room at James, at the 11 board members, at Ethan. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because Lily Harper deserved justice. Because Sophie Martinez and 246 other families deserve justice. And because Derek Blackwell needed to be stopped. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen went black. Then I turned to Derek and said the words I'd been waiting 4 years to say. I clicked to the next slide. It was time to show them everything. I clicked to the next slide. MC Ventures corporate structure. The screen filled with a diagram. A sprawling network of entities connected by dotted lines. 47 portfolio companies. Delaware LLC's Nevada trusts offshore entities in the Cayman Islands and British Virgin Islands. Each one flagged with a small notation FBA compliant. IRS Form 8938 filed. James Caldwell leaned forward. His eyes scanning the diagram. How long have you been building this? 15 years. I said. I started with a single angel investment when I was 23. A fintech startup that went public in 2012. I made $42 million. I rolled it into venture capital and never stopped. By the time I met Derek, I was managing $3.8 billion. Today, it's 5.2. One of the board members, a silver-haired man named Richard Hayes, set down his pen. And he never knew. He never asked. I turned to Derek, who sat frozen in his chair, his face ashen. When we got married in August 2020, I insisted we file taxes separately. I told you I had a small inheritance from my aunt. About $200. 000. You laughed. You said it wasn't even worth your time. That was the first lie you believed. Derek's mouth opened. But no sound came out. I clicked the remote again. Derek Blackwell debt portfolio acquired by MC Ventures 2021 to 2024. Gambling debt $2 million. Vegas casinos offshore sports betting secured personal loans $3 million collateralized against Patricia Blackwell's estate now void due to irrevocable trust unsecured. Personal loans $12 million. High interest private lenders. Credit card debt $8 million. Chase MX City. Payday loans $3,000. Zero predatory lenders April 300% plus total debt $28 million purchased by MC Ventures at 40 cents per dollar. Total acquisition cost 11,200,000. The room went silent. For the past 3 years. I said, my voice calm and steady. I've been quietly buying up every dollar of debt Derek accumulated. Credit card companies. Casinos. Private lenders. They were all happy to sell to a debt collection firm. Derek didn't know. But I own his entire financial life. $28 million in debt purchased for $11.2 million. James Caldwell's jaw tightened. And the loans secured against Patricia's estate void. I said the irrevocable trust one helped Patricia establish in August 2020 made those loans unenforceable. Derek thought his mother's $4.2 million estate was his safety net. But I locked it away before he could touch it. Derek surged to his feet. His chair scraping violently against the floor. You had no right. I had every right. I said. My voice cutting through his protest. Patricia asked me to help her. She was terrified you'd drain her accounts to cover your gambling debts. She told me you'd already asked her to co-sign loans. So, I introduced her to an independent attorney. Had her evaluated by a neurologist. And helped her protect what was hers. It's all documented. Legal binding. I clicked to the next slide. Prenuptial agreement liquidated damages clause. If either party commits fraud, embezzlement, or criminal activity during the marriage, penalty $5 million liquidated damages. Asset division 100% of marital assets to the non-breaching party signed August 10, 2020. Witnessed by Margaret Campbell, Esquire. Independent counsel. You insisted on a prenup. Derek. I said quietly. You thought you were protecting yourself. You didn't realize I'd included a fraud penalty clause. The moment you committed a crime, and you've committed dozens. This clause activated $5 million in liquidated damages plus 100% of our marital assets. Which means the condo, the car, the vacation home in Lake Geneva. All of it belongs to me. Ethan spoke for the first time since his revelation. His voice cold and flat. She owns your debts. She owns your assets. And according to the prenup, she owns your future. Derek turned to him. His face twisted with rage. You set me up. You lied to me for 7 years. I didn't lie. Ethan said. I just never told you the truth. I clicked again. MC Ventures stake in Sterling and Chase private investment firm. No SEC filing required. Acquired through 3 shell companies. 2021 to 2023. MC Ventures equity stake 19% passive investment Ethan Harper via loan from MC Ventures 8% combined friendly stake 27% firm valuation 2024 $800 million MC Ventures stake value $152 million. The room erupted. James Caldwell stood abruptly. You own 19% of this firm through 3 separate holding companies acquired over 3 years. I said I stayed below 20% to avoid triggering internal disclosure requirements. Ethan's stake, 8% held in a family trust, was financed by MC Ventures. Combined, we control 27% more than any single partner at this table. Richard Hayes turned to Derek. His expression hard. Did you know about this? Derek shook his head mutely. James looked at me. His face unreadable. Why are you telling us this now? Because Derek Blackwell is a criminal. I said his embezzled client funds. Defrauded 247 families. Stolen intellectual property. And violated federal securities law. And for 7 years. He's done it under your roof. You deserve to know what kind of man you've been protecting. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. Why? Why did you do this? I turned to face him. Fully letting him see the woman he'd underestimated for 4 years. Because 7 years ago, you destroyed my best friend. Lily Harper was 26 years old. She had a future. She had dreams. And you stole them because you're a thief. A liar. And a coward. You fabricated insider trading charges to cover your own crime. You ruined her reputation. You made it impossible for her to find work. And when she couldn't take it anymore, she walked onto the Michigan Avenue Bridge and jumped. My voice didn't waver. She was my best friend. Derek. My college roommate. My sister in every way that mattered. And you killed her. Not with a gun. Not with your hands. But you killed her just the same. I stepped closer. This isn't about money. It never was. This is about justice. For Lily. For Sophie Martinez. And 246 other families you defrauded. For every person you've hurt in your pathetic, selfish quest to feel important. Derek sank back into his chair. His face drained of color. I clicked to the next slide. But I wasn't finished. The board needed to understand how deep Derek's betrayal went. They needed to see the true face of the man they'd trusted for a decade. I clicked to the next slide. Now, I want to talk about access, I said, turning to face the board. For the past 3 years, I've had real-time intelligence on Derek's activities, client meetings, phone calls, financial transactions. How? Because I had someone on the inside. Someone Derek trusted more than anyone. Derek's head snapped toward Ethan, his face contorting with disbelief. You were spying on me for 7 years. Ethan met his gaze without flinching. Every single day. Every conversation. Every crime you committed. I documented. I clicked the remote. Ethan Harper surveillance file 2018 to 2024. Audio recordings 847 hours FBI. Title 3 warrant. Legally admissible financial document. Photographs 2. 340 images. Video recordings. 63 clips recorded via phone during meetings with Derek, embezzlement admissions, 19 documented instances charity fraud discussions, 34 documented instances wire fraud, Laus Vandenberg calls, 6 recorded conversations, GBA violations, client data breaches, 8 documented instances. The room went silent. Richard Hayes leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. 147 hours. 7 years. Ethan said quietly. Derek invited me into his office. Into his home. Into his private deals. He told me everything because he thought I was his best friend. But I was never his friend. I was Lily's brother. And every single day for 7 years, I thought about what he did to her. How he stole her work. How he blackmailed her. How he destroyed her until she had nothing left. Derek's voice cracked. I didn't know she was your sister. I swear I didn't know. You never cared. Ethan said. His voice cold and flat. That's the problem. You never cared who you hurt. I clicked again. Lily Harper timeline. October 2015. Lily Harper. A 24. Joined Sterling and Chase as financial analyst. December 2015. Lily develops proprietary trading algorithm based on MIT thesis. January 2016. Derek Blackwell steals. Algorithm presents as his own work. February 2016. Derek receives $1.2 million bonus for his algorithm. January 30th. 2016. Lily confronts Derek. Derek fabricates insider trading charges. January 31st. 2016. Lily Harper terminated from Sterling and Chase. February to December 2016. Lily unable to find employment. Reputation destroyed. March 15th. 2017. Lily Harper dies by suicide. Age 26. Michigan Avenue Bridge. April 2017. Cassie Monroe and Ethan Harper make blood oath at Lily's funeral. The photograph on the screen showed a young woman with dark hair and bright eyes standing in front of the Chicago skyline. She was smiling. She looked happy. She looked like she had a future. James Caldwell stared at the screen, his jaw tight. She worked here for 14 months. I said she was brilliant. Top of her class at MIT. She'd written a thesis on high-frequency trading algorithms that caught the attention of half a dozen firms. Sterling and Chase hired her in October 2015. By December, she developed a proprietary algorithm that could predict market volatility with 87% accuracy. I turned to Derek and you stole it. You took her work, presented it to the partners as your own, and collected a $1.2 million bonus. When Lily tried to report you, you fabricated insider trading charges and had her fired. You destroyed her reputation so thoroughly that no firm in Chicago would hire her. She couldn't get a job, couldn't pay her rent, couldn't see a future. My voice didn't waver. On March 15, 2017, Lily Harper walked onto the Michigan Avenue Bridge at 2 in the morning and jumped. She was 26 years old. The room was silent. Lily was my best friend. I continued. My college roommate at Northwestern. The smartest person I'd ever known. And Derek didn't just steal her work. He stole her life. So Ethan and I decided we would make him confess. We would document every crime and we would make sure the whole world knew exactly what kind of man he is. Derek's face had gone grey. He looked at Ethan. Then at me. Then back at the photograph on the screen. I didn't mean for her to. He started. Yes. You did. Ethan said quietly. Maybe not consciously. But you knew what you were doing. You knew she'd lose her job. You knew no one would hire her. You knew you were destroying her. You just didn't care. James Caldwell cleared his throat. Mrs. Blackwell. I need to understand how much of this evidence is admissible in court. All of it. I said. The FBI issued a Title III wiretap warrant in January 2021. Federal law supersedes Illinois' two-P party consent law. Every recording Ethan made under that warrant is legally admissible. Plus, Derek's office phone was covered under Sterling and Chase's workplace monitoring policy, which he signed in 2014. The company has the right to record any call made from a company line. I clicked to the next image. A signed document with Derek's signature at the bottom. And the Klaus Vandenberg calls. I continued. Those were routed through New York, a one-party consent state. Every word Derek said is evidence. One of the board members, a younger man named David Walsh, spoke for the first time. What about the videos recorded on Ethan's phone during meetings he attended with Derek? I said 63 clips over 7 years. Derek invited Ethan to strategy sessions, client meetings, private dinners. Ethan recorded everything and every single recording was made with FBI authorization. David looked at Ethan. You wore a wire for 7 years. No. Ethan said. I wore a wire for my sister. Derek surged to his feet. His chair clattering backward. This is entrapment, you set me up. Entrapment requires law enforcement to induce someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. I said calmly. You were already embezzling funds, defrauding charities, and stealing client data before Ethan ever met you. He didn't make you do anything. Derek. He just made sure there was a record. Derek's hands were shaking. Why? Why go through all this? Why not just turn me in 7 years ago? Because a civil lawsuit wouldn't have been enough. I said. You would have settled. Paid a fine. Moved to another firm. And in 5 years, you'd be doing the same thing to someone else. We needed a federal case. A RICO prosecution. A pattern of criminal activity spanning multiple years and multiple victims. We needed you to bury yourself so deeply that you'd never get out. I stepped closer. And you did. Derek. You buried yourself. Every lie you told. Every dollar you stole. Every family you defrauded. Ethan and I just made sure someone was watching. James Caldwell stood slowly. Mrs. Blackwell. What happens now? I looked at the 15 faces around the table, board members, partners, men who'd worked alongside Derek for years. Now, I said. Now you see the rest. But the recordings were just the beginning. Derek thought the prenup protected him. He had no idea I'd rewritten the rules of the game. I clicked to the next slide. Prenuptial agreement. August 10th, 2020. Signed 2 days before wedding. August 12th, 2020. Drafted by Paul Winters, Esquire. Derek Blackwell's attorney. Reviewed by Margaret Campbell, Esquire. Cassie Monroe's independent counsel. Derek insisted on a prenup. I said, turning to face the room. He was terrified I'd take his money in a divorce. So, I agreed. But I added a clause buried on page 11. Paragraph 4. Derek's attorney read it. Derek didn't. I clicked again. Clause 11.4. Liquidated damages for fraud. In the event that either party engages in financial fraud, embezzlement, or material misrepresentation during the marriage, the breaching party shall pay liquidated damages of $5,000,000 to the non-breaching party in addition to a division of 100% of marital assets in favor of the non-breaching party. Derek stared at the screen, his face draining of color. You didn't read it. I said calmly. You just signed because you were so confident I had nothing. But here's the thing. Derek, fraud isn't just lying to me. It's lying to clients. Lying to investors. Lying to the government. And you've been doing that for 7 years. I click to the next slide. Prenup enforcement calculation. Liquidated damages. $5 million. Marital assets subject to division. Derek's equity stake in Sterling and Chase. $3,200,000. Blackwell Scholarship Fund recoverable balance $1,100,000. Joint home equity $800,000. Joint accounts $200,000. Total marital assets $5,300,000. 100% to Cassie Monroe. Total prenup payout $10,300,000. One of the board members, Richard Hayes, leaned forward, his eyes scanning the numbers. $3.2 million in equity. Derek owns 4% of Sterling and Chase. I said at an $800 million valuation. That's $3.2 million. As of tonight, that equity belongs to me along with the remaining balance in the Blackwell Scholarship Fund. $1.1 million that Derek hasn't stolen yet. And our joint home in Lincoln Park. Derek's voice was barely audible. You can't do this. I can't. I said. And I am. But wait. There's more. I clicked again. Debt acquisition summary. MC Ventures purchased $28 million of Derek's debt for $11,200,000 and $4 per dollar as creditor. MC Ventures can now demand immediate repayment or seize collateral. Derek's remaining assets. Salary at Sterling and Chase. Garnished wage. Garnishment order. Personal vehicle 2022. Porsche 911 seized Patricia Blackwell's estate $4.2 million inaccessible irrevocable trust net worth after prenup enforcement plus debt collection minus $700,000. You thought you were rich, Derek. I said quietly. But you've been bankrupt for 3 years. You just didn't know it. I own your debts. I own your assets. And after tonight, I own your future. Derek collapsed back into his chair, his hands trembling. This can't be happening. James Caldwell set down his pen and turned to me. Mrs. Blackwell. I assume you're presenting this to us because you want Sterling and Chase to take action. I'm presenting this because in about 5 minutes, FBI Special Agent Sarah Reynolds will walk through that door with an arrest warrant. I wanted you to see the evidence first because when Derek is gone, Sterling and Chase will need new leadership. And I'm prepared to offer a $50 million capital injection in exchange for a board seat and a commitment to compensate Derek's victims. The room went silent. James stared at me. You want a board seat? I already own 19% of this firm. I said. I could have demanded a seat years ago. But I waited because I wanted you to understand exactly who Derek Blackwell is before I stepped into the light. I turned to face Derek. You spent 4 years thinking I was nothing. A struggling writer. A burden. Someone you could humiliate at parties and dismiss in boardrooms. But the truth is, Derek, I've been 10 steps ahead of you since the day we met. I married you to destroy you. And tonight that's exactly what I'm doing. Derek's voice cracked. Why? Why go through all this? Why not just turn me in 7 years ago? Because Lily Harper deserved more than a settlement. I said. She deserved justice. Real justice. The kind that puts you in federal prison for 20 years. The kind that strips you of every dollar you stole. Every lie you told. Every life you ruined. So Ethan and I built a case. A federal RICO case. Wire fraud. Mail fraud. Embezzlement. Charity fraud. Securities violations. And we made sure every single crime was documented, recorded, and admissible in court. I stepped closer. You killed my best friend. Derek. You stole her work, destroyed her reputation, and drove her to suicide. And then you spent 7 years doing the same thing to 247 other families. You're not just a thief. You're a predator. And tonight, the world is going to know it. Derek's face twisted with rage. You're insane. The door opened. A woman in a navy suit stepped inside holding a black leather credential case. Behind her, 2 more agents and FBI windbreakers flanked the doorway. Special Agent Sarah Reynolds. FBI. She said, her voice calm and authoritative. She looked directly at Derek. Derek Blackwell. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, mail fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit racketeering. Derek stood abruptly, his face draining of color. This is entrapment. I want a lawyer. You'll have the opportunity to call an attorney once we're at the field office. Agent Reynolds said. But before we take you into custody, Mrs. Blackwell has requested a few more minutes. There's someone here who deserves to speak. She looked at me. I nodded. Thank you. Agent Reynolds. She stepped back, positioning herself near the door. The 2 agents remained in the hallway. James Caldwell turned to me. Mrs. Blackwell, you mentioned there was one more person you wanted us to meet. I nodded. Yes. Someone Derek wronged in the worst possible way. I walked to the door and opened it. A young woman stepped inside, followed by an older woman with tired eyes and calloused hands. The younger woman was 19, maybe 20, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and an MIT sweatshirt that looked like it had been washed 100 times. She carried herself with the careful composure of someone who'd learned early that the world doesn't give second chances. Gentlemen, I said, turning to face the board. I want you to meet someone. The young woman stepped forward. This is Sophie Martinez. I said. 2 years ago, Derek promised her a full-ride scholarship to MIT through the Blackwell Scholarship Fund. Sophie was valedictorian of her high school class in South Chicago. 4.0 GPA. Perfect SAT score. She dreamed of becoming a biomed engineer. Sophie looked directly at Derek, who sat frozen in his chair, his face ashen. You came to my school in the spring of 2022. Sophie said. Her voice steady but tight. You gave a speech about how education changed your life. You said you wanted to give kids like me the same opportunity. You promised me $320,000 for 4 years at MIT tuition room board. Everything. You handed me a certificate in front of the entire school. My family celebrated. My mother cried. We thought our lives were about to change. I clicked the remote. The projection screen flickered to life. Blackwell Scholarship Fund Certificate. Awarded to Sophie Martinez. Amount $320,000. Full scholarship. 4 years institution, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Signed by Derek Blackwell. Founder date April 15, 2022. The certificate filled the screen official letterhead. Derek's signature in bold black ink. A gold seal in the corner. Sophie's voice cracked slightly. But when I showed up at MIT for orientation in August 2022, the financial aid office had no record of the scholarship. They said no payment had been received. My mother called your office 14 times. You never called back. We had 48 hours to pay tuition or I'd lose my spot. My mother sold her car. We borrowed $50,000 from relatives. Now I'm $80,000 in debt. Working 2 jobs just to stay in school. The older woman, Sophie's mother, Maria Martinez, stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but fierce. My daughter should have been free, she said. Looking at the board members nod at Derek. She earned that freedom herself with her own hard work. And this man stole it from her. I clicked to the next slide. Blackwell Scholarship Fund full breakdown 2021 to 2023 total funds raised $12,400,000. Scholarships promised 202,160 students 2022 80 students including Sophie Martinez 2023 107 students total 247 students scholarships actually awarded 0. Administrative costs declared $11,008,800. 0.00095% remaining balance $600,000.0005%. Actual destination of $1.8 million Derek Blackwell's offshore accounts Cayman Islands, Bahamas. The room went silent. Sophie isn't alone. I said there are 246 other families just like hers. Kids who were promised a future. Parents who made sacrifices based on Derek's lies. I've contacted every single one of them. 198 have agreed to join a class action lawsuit. The remaining 49 have been referred to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I clicked again. Criminal referrals to IRS Criminal Investigation. Charity fraud 11,800. 000 stolen from 501c3 tax-exempt fund. Tax evasion $8,200. 000. Unreported offshore income. Expected federal penalty 10 to 20 years prison asset forfeit. Full restitution to victims. Class action lawsuit. 198 families participating. Individual criminal complaints. 49 families. IRSC. Derek lifted his head. His eyes red-rimmed. I was going to pay them back. I just needed more time. Klaus was about to invest. Klaus doesn't exist. Derek. I said. My voice. Cutting through his protest. There was no investor. No $50 million. It was me the entire time. I spent 18 months building a fake identity just to get you to confess your crimes on tape. And you did. Every word. I clicked to the final slide. Klaus Vandenberg fabrication process. Total investment in deception $180,000. Components website Zurich office rental planted articles Financial Times Bloomberg $120,000 AI deep fake voice synthesis software $35,000 000 fake track record LinkedIn profile receptionist service $25,000 RE deep fake calls with Derek Blackwell 67 recorded conversations Derek's recorded admissions I've been creative with off-book opport opportunities. Client money mostly. Small amounts they won't notice. The charity money is just sitting there. I'll replace it later when the Klaus deal comes through. I need to move $8 million without the firm noticing. Can you structure it as a private placement? You confessed everything Derek want. I said quietly. And I have every word. Derek's head dropped into his hands. His shoulders shook. James Caldwell turned to Sophie. Miss Martinez. What do you need from Sterling and Chase? Sophie looked at him surprised. I don't know. I just wanted someone to know what he did. I wanted people to understand that we're not numbers. We're real. We had dreams. You'll get your scholarship, James said firmly. Sterling and Chase will cover your remaining tuition room and board for the next 2 years. And we'll work with Mrs. Blackwell to establish a victims' compensation fund for the other families. You have my word. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Maria Martinez reached for her daughter's hand. Agent Reynolds stepped forward from her position near the door. Mr. Blackwell. It's time. Derek stood slowly. His movements mechanical. He looked at Sophie. Then at me. You destroyed me, he whispered. No. I said. You destroyed 247 families. You destroyed Lily Harper. You destroyed every person who trusted you. I just made sure there was a record. Agent Reynolds gestured to the 2 agents in the hallway. They stepped forward. Derek Blackwell. She said. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. The agents moved to either side of Derek. But before they could cuff him, Derek reached into his jacket pocket. Wait, he said. His voice breaking. I can't do this. He pulled out something small and metallic. A gun. The room erupted. Agent Reynolds drew her weapon. Drop it. Drop the weapon now. Derek raised the gun. Not toward anyone else, but toward himself. His hand was shaking. I can't go to prison, he said. Tears streaming down his face. I can't. Derek. Don't. Ethan said, rising from his seat. But Derek's final move was predictable. He was always a performer. And when the walls closed in, he reached for the oldest trick in the book. Derek stood abruptly. His chair clattering backward. His voice cracked with desperation. You destroyed me. You took everything. What am I supposed to do now? Just give up. I remained perfectly still. That's exactly what I expected you to do. Derek's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. Maybe I should just end this right now. Several board members shifted in their seats. Ethan rose halfway from his chair, his body tensing. Derek pulled out a black semi-automatic pistol. Smith & Wesson. M&P 9mm. The overhead lights caught the dull metal finish. James Caldwell stood. Derek put it down. Derek raised the gun to his temple. His hand shaking. I'd rather die than lose everything. The room froze. Agent Reynolds' hand moved toward her holster. But I held up one finger. Wait. Go ahead. I said. My voice calm and clear. Pull the trigger. Every head in the room turned toward me. Derek's eyes widened. What? You heard me. I said. Pull the trigger. Derek. If you're really going to do it now. But we both know you won't. His finger trembled on the trigger. You think I don't have the courage? I know you don't. I said. Because 2 weeks ago, Ethan replaced the ammunition in that gun with dummy rounds. You're holding training bullets. Derek. They won't fire. But more importantly, I clicked the remote. The projection screen flickered. Derek Blackwell rehearsal video. Recorded hidden camera. Derek's office. Sterling and Chase. Date February 18th, 2024. 11:47 p.m. Duration 4 to 32. The video began to play. The screen showed Derek's office at night. Empty. Except for Derek himself standing in front of the Florida ceiling window with the Chicago skyline behind him. He held the same gun. The same Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm. He faced his reflection in the darkened glass, adjusting his grip on the weapon. Okay. Here's the move, Derek said to himself. His voice clear on the recording. I say, I'd rather die than lose everything. Then I point the gun at my head. Everyone panics. Cassie panics. And in the chaos, I can destroy evidence and get out. It's just theater. Just theater. On screen, Derek raised the gun to his temple, practicing the angle. He adjusted his facial expression. Anguish. Desperation. Rage. He rehearsed the line delivery, testing different inflections. I'd rather die than lose everything. Pause. I'd rather die than lose everything. Longer. Pause. I'd rather die than lose everything. He checked his watch, timing the dramatic beat. The room was silent except for the audio from the video. In the present, Derek's face had gone white. The gun trembled in his hand. James Caldwell stared at the screen, his expression shifting from shock to disgust. You were rehearsing. One of the board members, Richard Hayes, pushed his chair back. He was planning this for months. I stood and walked slowly toward Derek. You were never going to pull the trigger. You're too much of a coward. But you were willing to let everyone in this room think you might to manipulate us to buy time to escape justice. That's who you really are, Derek. A performer. A fraud. And your final act just ended. Derek's hand dropped. The gun clattered to the floor. He fell to his knees. Please, he whispered, his voice breaking. Cassie, please. I'll pay everyone back. I'll fix this. You can't fix this, I said quietly. You can't fix Lily. You can't fix Sophie. You can't fix the 246 other children whose futures you stole. And you certainly can't fix yourself. Agent Reynolds stepped forward, nodding to the two agents in the hallway. They entered and moved toward Derek. Derek Blackwell, Agent Reynolds said, pulling handcuffs from her belt. You are under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, embezzlement, charity fraud, and conspiracy to commit racketeering. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Do you understand these rights? Derek said nothing. One of the agents pulled him to his feet while the other secured the handcuffs around his wrists. Derek looked at me one last time, tears streaming down his face. I loved you once, he whispered. No, I said. You didn't. You only loved yourself. And now you'll have 20 years in federal prison to think about that. The agents led him toward the door. Derek's legs barely supported his weight. He looked back at the boardroom. At James Caldwell. At the 11 directors. At Ethan. At me. Then he was gone. The door closed. For a long moment, no one spoke. Agent Reynolds picked up the gun from the floor with a gloved hand, checked the magazine, and shook her head. Dummy rounds. Every single one. She looked at me. You knew. Ethan told me 2 weeks ago, I said. When Derek started talking about his contingency plan, Ethan accessed his office after hours and swapped the ammunition. We couldn't let him hurt himself. We needed him alive to face trial. James Caldwell sank back into his chair. How long have you known about the rehearsal video? Since February 19th. I said the hidden camera in Derek's office has been recording for 3 years. Ethan installed it with FBI authorization under the Title III warrant. We have hundreds of hours of footage. This was just the most theatrical. Richard Hayes rubbed his face with both hands. I've worked with Derek for 12 years. I had no idea. That's how predators operate. Ethan said quietly. They're charming. Convincing. They make you believe you know them. But you never do. Agent Reynolds turned to James. Mr. Caldwell. I'll need you and your team to remain available for depositions over the next few weeks. We'll be building the federal case and your cooperation will be essential. James nodded. You'll have everything you need. Agent Reynolds looked at me. Mrs. Monroe. 9:00 a.m. Tomorrow at the field office. We'll go over your testimony and the evidence you've compiled. I'll be there. I said. She nodded and followed her colleagues out of the room. The door closed again. The 15 of us sat in silence. Board members Ethan, James, and me. The projection screen still showed the frozen frame of Derek rehearsing his fake suicide. His face caught mid-performance. I clicked the remote. The screen went black. Sophie Martinez and her mother had left quietly during the arrest. But I could still see the weight of Sophie's words hanging in the air. We're not numbers. We're real. We had dreams. James Caldwell cleared his throat. Mrs. Monroe. What happens now? I looked around the table at the faces of men who an hour ago had thought they were attending an anniversary party. Men who now understood they'd been working alongside a criminal for over a decade. Now I said. Now we make sure every single family gets justice. We establish the compensation fund. We work with the FBI to recover every stolen dollar. And we make sure Derek Blackwell's name becomes a warning, not a legacy. Richard Hayes spoke. And Sterling and Chase. Sterling and Chase cooperates fully with federal investigators. I said. You implement new compliance protocols. You audit every client account Derek touched. And you prove to the world that this firm is more than one man's crimes. James met my eyes. And your board seat. We'll discuss that tomorrow. I said. After the FBI deposition. After we've had time to process tonight. But yes. I want that seat. And I want to use it to make sure this never happens again. As Derek was led away. The board sat in stunned silence. But my work wasn't finished. There were still consequences to enforce. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn on August 13th, I drove to the FBI field office on West Roosevelt Road and sat in a small conference room with Agent Reynolds, watching Derek's arraignment on a closed-circuit monitor. The courtroom was sterile. White walls. Fluorescent lights. The Great Seal of the United States mounted above the judge's bench. Derek stood in an orange jumpsuit. His hands cuffed in front of him. Flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals. His public defender, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, stood beside him with a stack of documents. The magistrate judge read the charges. United States of America versus Derek Michael Blackwell. Count 1 through Count 23. Wire fraud in violation of Title 18. United States Code. Section 1. 343. Count 24. Conspiracy to commit racketeering in violation of Title 18. United States Code. Section 1. 961. Count 25 through Count 36. Mail fraud in violation of Title 18. United States Code Section 1. 341. Count 37 through Count 43. Tax fraud in violation of Title 26. United States Code. Section 7. 26. 43 counts. Theoretical maximum sentence 120 years in federal prison. Derek's face was gray. His shoulders sagged. The judge continued. Mr. Blackwell, how do you plead? Derek's public defender leaned toward the microphone. Not guilty, Your Honor. And we respectfully request bail pending trial. The assistant U.S. attorney, a sharp-eyed man named David Walsh, rose from the prosecution table. Your Honor, the United States opposes bail. Mr. Blackwell presents a substantial flight risk. He maintains offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and the Bahamas totaling $11.2 million, which the FBI has frozen pending forfeit proceedings. He has no remaining ties to the community, no family support, no employment, and substantial criminal exposure. We request he be held without bail. The judge looked down at the file in front of her. Bail is denied. Mr. Blackwell will remain in federal custody pending trial. Next appearance is scheduled for September 15th. The gavel came down. Derek's shoulders shook. One of the marshals touched his elbow and he shuffled toward the side door. Agent Reynolds turned off the monitor. We've frozen $11.2 million in offshore accounts. The IRS is pursuing an additional $8 million in tax penalties. Between your prenup, the debt collection, and federal asset forfeit, Derek Blackwell will die in debt. I nodded. Good. She handed me a manila folder. This is the restitution schedule. Once the criminal case concludes, the court will order Derek to pay back every dollar he stole. It won't be enough. He doesn't have enough. But it's a start. I opened the folder. 247 names. 247 families. We'll set up the Victim Compensation Fund today. I said MC Ventures will contribute $12.5 million. I'm asking Sterling and Chase to match it. $25 million total. Agent Reynolds met my eyes. That's more than most victims ever see. It's not enough, I said quietly. But it's something. That afternoon, I drove to Sunrise Senior Living in Oak Park. Patricia Blackwell sat in a chair by the window, her hands folded in her lap. She was 71 now. Her hair completely white, her face lined with age. She wore a lavender cardigan and grey slacks. A nurse hovered nearby, adjusting the curtains to let in more light. I sat down across from her. Patricia, I said gently. It's Cassie. She looked at me, her eyes unfocused. Are you my nurse? Something like that. I said. I'm here to make sure you're safe. Patricia would never understand what Derek had done. In a way, that was a mercy. The irrevocable trust I'd helped her establish 4 years ago would pay for her care for the rest of her life. $12,000 a month. Funded by her late husband's pension and investments. Derek would never touch a cent of it. But he'd tried. 2 days after his arrest, Derek's public defender filed an emergency motion in Cook County Probate Court. Patricia Blackwell lacked mental capacity to execute the irrevocable trust in August 2020. The trust should be declared invalid and the estate transferred to her son, Derek Blackwell. Margaret Campbell, Patricia's independent attorney, filed a response the same day. I reviewed it in the FBI conference room while Agent Reynolds worked at her laptop. The defense was airtight. Dr. Harold Winter's 2020 Cognitive Assessment Mini Mental State Examination score of 27 out of 30 indicating mild cognitive impairment. But a documented lucid interval. Patricia understood the nature and consequences of the trust. Video recording of the signing ceremony. 4 minutes and 18 seconds of footage showing Patricia asking questions, reading the documents, and signing voluntarily. Margaret Campbell explained every clause. Patricia stated on camera, I want to protect my assets from Derek. He's not responsible with money. Patricia's handwritten letter. August 20th, 2020. 2 pages in her own handwriting explaining her decision. Derek has always been reckless. I've watched him gamble away thousands of dollars. I've watched him lie to me about debts. Cassie has been kind to me. She visits me twice a week. She listens. I trust her to manage my affairs when I no longer can. This is my choice. No one is forcing me. Margaret Campbell's affidavit sworn statement confirming Patricia was represented by independent counsel that no undue influence was exerted and that Patricia's decision was informed and voluntary. On August 20th, Judge Ellen Morrison of the Cook County Probate Court issued her ruling. The irrevocable trust executed by Patricia Blackwell on August 22 ND. 2020 was created during a documented lucid interval with full legal capacity. The petitioner, Derek Blackwell, has provided no credible evidence of fraud, undue influence, or lack of capacity. The trust is valid and enforceable. Mr. Blackwell's motion is denied. I read the order twice, then set it down on the table. Patricia's assets were safe. Derek would never touch them. The next day, I sat in the Sterling and Chase boardroom, the same room where 3 days earlier, Derek had pulled a gun and tried to perform his final act. James Caldwell sat at the head of the table. The 11 board members filled the remaining seats. Ethan sat to my right. James cleared his throat. Mrs. Monroe, on behalf of Sterling and Chase, I want to offer an apology. We failed in our fiduciary duty by not detecting Derek's misconduct sooner. Your $50 million capital injection offer is generous. But first we need to discuss victim compensation. I've already started setting up the fund. I said MC Ventures will contribute $12.50 million. I'm asking Sterling and Chase to match it. That's $25 million total. It won't erase the harm Derek caused. But it's a start. James nodded. Agreed. Sterling and Chase will contribute $12.5 million to the compensation fund. We'll also establish new compliance protocols, mandatory external audits, client account reviews, and whistleblower protections. Richard Hayes spoke. And your board seat. I want it. I said. Not as a trophy, but as a responsibility. I want to make sure this never happens again. James extended his hand across the table. Then, welcome to the board, Mrs. Monroe. I shook his hand. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a faint smile on his face. The legal consequences were just the beginning. Derek's public humiliation was about to go national. The media explosion began before dawn on August 14th. I was sitting in my Lincoln Park condo. The same condo Derek had thought was his, drinking coffee and watching the sun rise over Lake Michigan when my phone started buzzing. Text messages. Email alerts. Notifications from news apps I'd forgotten I'd installed. By 7 a.m. The story was everywhere. Chicago Tribune. August 14th. 2024. Billionaire wife exposes husband's $20 million fraud scheme. Bloomberg. August 15th. 2024. Sterling and Chase executive arrested on RICO charity fraud charges. Forbes. August 20th. 2024. Meet Cassie Monroe, the secret billionaire who took down her own husband. The Forbes article was the one that changed everything. They'd sent a photographer to my new office. A glass-walled corner suite in the Willis Tower with views that stretched all the way to the horizon. The photo showed me standing at the window in a navy blazer. My arms crossed. My expression calm. It was the first time the public had seen my face. The article detailed MC Ventures' $5.22 billion portfolio. 47 companies. 15 years of building an empire in silence. And then it quoted me directly. This was never about revenge. It's about justice for the people Derek hurt. Lily Harper. Sophie Martinez. 246 other families who trusted him. They deserved better. And now finally, they'll get it. By the end of the day, the article had been shared 200,000 times. Social media erupted. #Derek Blackwell trended on Twitter for 11 straight days. The hashtag became a repository for outrage screenshots of his charity gala speeches, photos of the fake scholarship certificates, testimonials from the families he defrauded. Ethan started #Justice for Lily. Within 48 hours, it had gone viral. People shared Lily's MIT thesis, her acceptance letter to Sterling and Chase, a photo of her standing on the Michigan Avenue Bridge smiling 6 months before she died. The 247 families began sharing their stories under #Blackwell Scholars Fraud. Parents who'd sold cars, students working 3 jobs, dreams deferred or destroyed because Derek Blackwell had lied. Derek's reputation didn't just collapse, it was obliterated. On August 22 ND, Sophie Martinez appeared on Good Morning America. I watched from my office the broadcast playing on the wall-mounted screen. Sophie sat across from the host, composed and articulate, wearing the same MIT sweatshirt she'd worn in the boardroom 9 days earlier. "He came to my school," Sophie said, her voice steady. "He gave a speech about opportunity, about how education had changed his life. And then he handed me a certificate promising $320,000. My family celebrated. My mother cried. We thought everything was going to be okay." The host leaned forward. "But it wasn't." "No," Sophie said. "When I got to MIT, there was no scholarship, no record of any payment. I called his office 14 times. He never called back. My mother sold her car. We borrowed $50,000 from family. Now I'm $80,000 in debt and I work 2 jobs just to stay in school." The host turned to the camera. Joining us now via satellite is Cassie Monroe, founder of MC Ventures and the woman who exposed Derek Blackwell's crimes. "Mrs. Monroe, thank you for being here." I nodded at the camera in my office. "Thank you for having me. You've announced the creation of the Second Chance Scholars Fund. Can you tell us about it?" MC Ventures and Sterling and Chase have together committed $25 million to provide substantial scholarships to all $247 families Derek defrauded. Each student will receive an average of $100,000, enough to cover multiple years of tuition-reduced debt and restore the opportunities Derek stole from them. The host smiled. "That's extraordinary. These kids earned their futures." I said. "Derek took them. I'm giving them back." By the end of the week, all 247 families had been contacted. Sophie's $80,000 debt was paid in full by MC Ventures. Her mother got a check for $50,000 to replace the car she'd sold. Sophie called me the day she received the money. She cried on the phone for 5 minutes before she could speak. "Thank you," she finally whispered. "You gave me my life back. You did that yourself." I said. "I just made sure Derek couldn't take it again." In November, Derek accepted a plea deal. The federal prosecutors had offered 18 years in exchange for full cooperation and asset forfeit. Derek's public defender recommended he take it. The alternative, a trial with 43 counts and a theoretical maximum of 120 years, was unthinkable. On November 18, Derek stood before Judge Patricia Callahan in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois and pleaded guilty to all charges. Final sentence: 18 years in federal prison. Eligible for release after 15 years with good behavior. $14 million in restitution, paid from forfeited assets. Lifetime ban from the financial services industry. 10 years of supervised release. Upon completion of sentence, Agent Reynolds sent me a copy of the sentencing order. I read it twice, then filed it away. Derek would be 62 years old when he got out. If he got out. On November 30th, I sat alone in my new office as the sun set over Chicago. People kept asking me if I felt satisfied. If I felt like I'd won. The truth was, I didn't feel much of anything. Lily was still gone. Sophie and 246 other kids had still had their lives upended. Derek would sit in prison for 15 to 18 years. But that wouldn't undo the damage he'd caused. It wouldn't bring Lily back. It wouldn't erase the years Sophie spent working 2 jobs to stay in school. What I felt was closure. The man who had destroyed my best friend, who had stolen her work, fabricated charges against her, and driven her to suicide, had finally been held accountable. Not just in a civil lawsuit. Not just with a fine or a settlement. But with 18 years in federal prison and the complete destruction of everything he'd built. Derek Blackwell's name would never be associated with success again. It would be a warning. A case study in fraud. A cautionary tale about greed and cruelty. And maybe in some small way, Lily could rest now. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights stretching toward the lake. Ethan had published a memoir. 7 years, How My Sister's Death Became My Mission. It debuted at number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. He donated all the proceeds to mental health organizations. Sophie was thriving at MIT. She'd switched her major to biomedical engineering and joined a research lab studying Alzheimer's disease inspired. She told me. By Patricia. Patricia herself remained at Sunrise Senior, living her care fully funded by the irrevocable trust. She didn't remember Derek. She didn't remember me. But twice a week, I visited her anyway, sitting by the window and telling her stories about a daughter she'd never had. Sterling and Chase had implemented the reforms James Caldwell promised. I attended every board meeting. I reviewed every compliance report. I made sure that what Derek had done could never happen again. And Derek sat in a federal correctional institution in Terre-Haute, Indiana, serving the first months of an 18-year sentence. I hadn't thought about him in weeks until 16 months later when I received a letter. It was from Derek. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. December 15th, 2025. The envelope arrived at my office on a cold Monday morning, forwarded through my attorney. The return address read FCI Sandstone Federal Correctional Institution, Sandstone, Minnesota. The sender, Derek Blackwell. Number 84729-024. I stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Part of me wanted to burn it. Part of me wanted to throw it in the trash without reading a single word. But I needed to know. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out 2 handwritten pages. Cassie, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you'll read this. But I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry. Not because it will change anything, but because it's true. I've had a lot of time to think in here about Lily, about Sophia, about all the people I hurt. I told myself I was smart, that I deserved success. But the truth is, I was a coward. I always took the easy way and it cost me everything. You were right. I never loved you. I only love the image of you. The perfect silent wife who made me look better. I'm ashamed of that now. I heard about the scholarship fund. Thank you for doing what I should have done. Those kids deserve better. They deserve the truth. I'll be here for a long time. Maybe that's what I need. I hope someday I can become the man Lily thought I was when she first met me. But I know that's not your concern anymore. I hope you find peace. Cassie. You deserve it. Derek. I set the letter down on my desk. Too little. Too late. I said aloud. Then I filed it away in a drawer and never responded. 13 months had passed since Derek Blackwell was arrested on the rooftop of the Chicago Athletic Association. 13 months since I watched FBI agents lead him out of that boardroom in handcuffs. 13 months since I stopped pretending to be someone I wasn't. A lot had changed. In December 2024, I went public as the CEO and founder of MC Ventures. The press conference was short. 10 minutes. No questions. I stated the facts. $5.20 $2 billion under management, 47 portfolio companies, 15 years of building an empire in silence. Forbes named me to their most powerful women in the world list in 2025. The photo showed me standing in my Willis Tower office, arms crossed, looking out at the Chicago skyline. The caption read, "The billionaire who brought down her own husband and rebuilt an industry." I launched the Second Chance Scholars Fund in Lily's name. $25 million to provide substantial scholarships. An average of $100,000 per student. To all 247 families Derek had defrauded. I remained single-focused. MC Ventures expanded into clean energy and biotechnology. I hired the best people. I built companies that mattered. And once a month, I drove to Sunrise Senior Living and sat with Patricia Blackwell. She didn't recognize me anymore. Her latest stage Alzheimer's had taken most of her memory. But I read to her anyway, novels and news articles and stories about a daughter she'd never had. Derek was serving 18 years at FCY Sandstone, a medium-security federal prison in Minnesota. He worked in the prison library and taught GED classes to younger inmates. He'd be eligible for parole in 2039 at age 53. His net worth was negative $14 million. He owed the federal government more than he'd ever be able to repay. Ethan left finance entirely and became an advocate for corporate whistleblowers, working with nonprofits to protect employees who exposed fraud. In 2025, he published a memoir, 7 Years, The Long Game. It debuted at number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list. He donated every cent of the proceeds to mental health organizations in Lily's name. He spoke at universities Harvard, MIT, Northwestern about business ethics and the cost of silence. Students lined up after his talks asking how to do the right thing when the system rewards the opposite. "You find someone who believes the same thing you do," he told them. "And you don't give up ever." Sophie Martinez graduated from MIT in May 2025 with a degree in biomed engineering. She'd been hired by a medical device startup in MC Ventures' portfolio designing prosthetics for children. Affordable, adaptable, life-changing. She became the public face of the Second Chance Scholars Fund, speaking at fundraisers and high schools across the country. "Cassie Monroe gave me my life back," she said in every speech. "I'll spend the rest of it making sure no other child goes through what I did." Patricia lived at Sunrise Senior Living, her care fully funded by the irrevocable trust I'd helped her establish 6 years ago. She was 73 now. Her mind almost entirely gone. She couldn't remember Derek. She couldn't remember me. But I visited her every month anyway. Derek had been barred by court order from contacting her until 2030. By then, she likely wouldn't remember him at all. Sterling and Chase restructured its board after the scandal. James Caldwell resigned. The association with Derek had damaged his reputation beyond repair. I declined the board seat but remained a 19% shareholder. The firm paid $18 million in restitution to the clients Derek had embezzled from and implemented new compliance protocols, external audits, and whistleblower protections. Ethan consulted on the design. FBI Special Agent Sarah Reynolds was promoted to Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Financial Crimes Division. She used Derek's case as a training model for new agents. How to build a RICO case. How to work with cooperating witnesses. How to document evidence that would hold up in court. In an interview with the Chicago Tribune, she said, "Mrs. Monroe's documentation was the most meticulous I've seen in 20 years. She did half our job for us." December 20th. 2025. I stood in my office looking out at the Chicago skyline. The city stretched toward the lake, glittering in the late afternoon sun. On my desk sat a framed photograph of Lily Harper taken at her college graduation in 2013. She was smiling. Her cap tilted slightly to one side. Her whole life ahead of her. I picked up the frame and spoke to the image. "We did it. Lily," I said quietly. "He can't hurt anyone else. I hope that's enough. I hope you're finally at peace." There was a knock at the door. Ethan stepped inside. "You ready? The scholarship ceremony starts in an hour." I set the photo back on my desk. "Ready? Let's go meet the next generation." People ask me if I regret the 4 years I spent married to Derek. If I regret the 7 years Ethan and I spent planning his downfall. The answer is no. Because some things are worth waiting for. Justice is worth waiting for. And when you finally cut the thread on a burden you've carried for so long, you don't feel guilty. You feel free. And to you listening to this story, remember this. God gave us wisdom to discern truth from lies and patience. To wait for justice. 3 times I almost gave up when Lily died. When Derek lied to my face. And when the wait felt endless. But each time I prayed and asked God for strength. He reminded me that vengeance belongs to Him. But justice belongs to those who seek it with clean hands. Don't be like me. Don't waste 7 years of your life planning someone else's downfall. If I could go back, I would have reported Derek the moment I knew what he'd done to Lily. I would have trusted the system. Trusted God's timing. And trusted that the truth would come out without sacrificing my own peace. Family revenge is a poison that spreads. When Derek betrayed his own mother, stole from families, and destroyed lives, he thought he was building an empire. But family betrayal leaves scars that money can't heal. I learned that family revenge doesn't bring back the dead. It only multiplies the pain. And family betrayal, whether by blood or marriage, is a wound that never fully closes. My advice: choose justice. Not revenge. Choose transparency. Not deception. And most importantly, choose faith over fear. God sees everything. And in His time, the guilty will answer. Here's my truth. I'm free now. But freedom came at a cost I wouldn't wish on anyone. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced family betrayal? How did you find justice without becoming consumed by family revenge? Share your story. You never know who might need to hear it. And if you found value in this, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that justice, not vengeance, is the path to peace. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end. I know this was a long journey, but I hope it left you with something meaningful. A final note. The stories I share may contain fictionalized elements created for educational and reflective purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences.